Here in Melbourne, we've got an Aussie-owned company called HungryHungry, which has put the power back into the hands of restaurants and cafes to run their own takeaway delivery services, ending the long and quite controversial reliance on expensive overseas-owned delivery apps. Joining me in the studio today is HungryHungry's co-founder, Mark Calabro. Hello, Mark. Thanks for coming in.
Great to be here, Wendy.
So I'm pretty excited about this concept of using your phone to order your own dish when you're going out for dinner. And not just that, but you can pay for it as well at the table. Is that right?
Correct.
So how is this going to change restaurants? Is it going to mean that there'll be fewer interactions in general down the track? Do you think it'll change that service level?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and this is a conversation that we were having with lots of venues even pre-COVID. Fundamentally, what we're about is having technology come onto the dining room floor that's very complementary of the actual service as well, and that's something different for different types of venues as well.
Okay, so give me an example of a restaurant that's taken on HungryHungry's technology to ride out COVID-19 and make life a bit easier.
Yeah, there's many. One is Royal Stacks in the city. So they were very big on the contactless, as many restaurants and bars are having to be. Mm-hmm. Next week we open it up another level here in Victoria, which is going to be great for pub venues. And it's been also mandated that there's to be table service. So really what it means is it's giving operators another means of being able to get the orders in faster. Whereas maybe for restaurants, it kind of lives in a way that we can actually get the table sittings through also faster as well, given that we operate in very finite windows now to maximise the patrons coming through.
So walk us through. You walk into a restaurant. Mm-hmm. You give them your details, your name, your phone number, which is also mandatory when you're dining out. What happens next? Yeah,
so it's very much as it was pre-COVID. You would sit down at the table, and in most venues it's very optional. So we get that there's some people, I know with my father, I don't think his camera would actually even be able to scan a QR code. So it's a very optional thing where the staff will just introduce to having a QR code on the table. It might be a little sticker, it might be a QR code on the menu, where the customer can then choose to view the menu. So they scan it with their phone. They can view a beautiful menu with all of the photos of the food, and they can go ahead and order and pay. By the same token, for those that wish to still put an order through with the staff, they can do that in most cases. For pubs, it's a little bit different in that, it's the same sort of process, but for pubs, it's more about just trying to get the orders in at the actual table, so they don't have to go line up at the bar, which we're not allowed to do still.
Death of the counter meal.
Yeah, it'll be back. It'll be back. It's kind of a strange world we're in at the moment for many, that we're just kind of just winging this as we go. It's almost week by week, but it's part of the new industry and the new world.
So when COVID hit in March and restaurants were flailing all over the place, not knowing what to do, you guys, from what I can see, were a shining light for hospitality in that you gave them the option of managing their own takeaway and their own home delivery, which is a whole new ballgame for a whole heap of restaurants, employing their own staff that might have been out of work to hop in a car and deliver lasagna around town. Were you surprised by how fast it took off?
Yeah, we were, totally. We saw that even before the lockdown came, we saw what was happening in China and in other countries. It seems like so long ago.
It really does, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's kind of strange to actually stop and still reflect. But we just saw that very quickly there were restaurants wanting to get online under their own brand, which is a little bit different to going with some of the bigger aggregators, and probably fundamentally be able to have control of that process and collect some data as well, which restaurants are really starved for.
Okay, so let's talk about collecting that data, because I'm always the big skeptic when it comes to giving people information about myself. What happens when you give your name and email to a restaurant in order to order online, whether it's takeaway or ordering in the restaurant?
Yeah, so I mean, restaurants for years have been collecting some data. So if you do have a reservation, if you do that online, which most people do now, your name, email address, and mobile would go through to that restaurant. Now, that only represents a percentage of the whole industry where there is a reservation involved. So for most cafes, even bars, there wouldn't be. So a big thing for us when my partner and I started with HungryHungry was about sharing the data with businesses that have generally operated in a very offline world. So what
Mining.
Sorry?
Mining data.
Yeah, not necessarily mining data, just being able to engage with their customer after they've actually transacted. So retail have been doing this for years. If you buy something through a retail store, you'll often get an email or promotion or the opportunity to be able to re-engage with your customer. Maybe it's telling them something new that you're doing, you've got a new chef, a wine that you're showcasing. So for us, it's about the customer comes in, they've ordered something, they've given across some minimal information that the restaurant specifically can then re-engage with that customer after they've eaten in the venue.
Like dietary preferences or those sort of levels of information as well, I dare say.
Yeah, it starts becoming a bit more of a personalised experience, and we've got some great ideas in the future about how do we really make that experience for the consumer even better, and how can they then re-engage with their favourite brands, where they like to go and eat, and also what they're eating and sharing that with their friends as well.
Okay, so you're teasing now. How can people get that sort of information? What do you think it'll look like in the future?
I think for consumers, it's kind of twofold. One, that we know that people will be working from home a lot more going into the future. Great for suburban restaurants, where they might be rushed for time and they want to just go and quickly get something before the dinner rush. So they could go down to, let's say, a Francois for a beautiful steak. Now that they know post-COVID that they can have an amazing steak from Francois, takeaway, and it's just as good as being there, which who would have imagined that pre-COVID? So I think for consumers now, and also for restaurants, there's confidence in being able to get their food out of the venue or in the venue. So it's a matter
have control over how it appears at the end as well, I suppose.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you know, we've known that, and we've seen that in many instances over the years now with the rise of takeout. So for consumers, it's really about being better connected with their favourite brands when they go in there, still having a very personal experience. The owners get to know their name. Often, you know, names aren't actually known in a lot of cafes. So using technology to have a better experience overall on both sides.
No, it's a fascinating business now. You know, who would have thought that technology would take off so fast in restaurants who have been traditionally sort of perhaps a little bit more hands-on rather than tech-based? Have you felt that?
Yeah, it's kind of how do we get the best of both worlds, and it's really about, you know, technology for good. And I mean, my partner and I, we've been nearly 2 decades involved in this industry, and we set out to create something that is truly unique for the hospitality industry. We've got a lot of friends in the industry. We know a lot of people that are, you know, were hurting even before COVID. We're a year in now, and you know, that dream for us is still how do whatever we create and whatever we touch, it's really to be something great and loved by hospitality venues all over the country.
So is there any tips on what's going to be coming up next in terms of technology? Any big sky tips? Like it's a fascinating area. I think, you know, the whole idea of bringing in information about your likes and dislikes has been happening for a little while, but to give individual restaurants that information is a huge leap, right?
Yeah, I mean, restaurants, I mean, it's a struggle these days to know, you know, whether it's dietary requirements, trying to get extra bums on seats during non-peak times. I think that it's very exciting what the future holds. I think that we're all in this stage now where change is upon us. I think that it's going to present a huge amount of opportunity for those who can get through this next period. But look, there's some wonderful things that I think that are going to work very well for this industry. And I mean, we're in the world's greatest city for food, and we've got some amazing characters that are really championing a lot of this change.
we've been ruled, our stomachs and our minds have been ruled by some big overseas apps when it comes to home delivery. Can you see HungryHungry taking it back to the rest of the world?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, right now we're focusing in on Australia. For us, a big thing for us is supporting local. We just did that as soon as COVID hit, and it's a thing for us as a team as well, where we really want to support local businesses.
Oh, well, I can't wait to see what you guys do. Seriously, I think it's a really exciting project, and you're giving a lot of people hope in the hospitality industry. So thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you.